got people who are coming in, but we've got a lot to go over today, and I want to make sure to keep us on time. It's really weird to not be able to see any of you, so I'm going to navigate through that here. But just know that I'm really excited you're here, really excited to talk about this topic with you. My name is Cynthia Farrell, and I am here today to talk to you about a topic that is really, really important to me for my own personal journey, and something I love to talk about with others, especially with women. And it's the concept of emotional intelligence. And I'll be talking about that through my presentation, Unpack Your Bags and Lead, leveraging emotional intelligence for leadership success. So I'm going to introduce myself really quickly first to give a little bit of my background, and then I will share my content and we can dive into the conversation. So I am, again, my name is Cynthia Farrell. I am the Chief Talent Strategist. That's the title I've given myself for my company, 110 West Group. My organization is me, provide leadership and culture development consulting to organizations. The way that I like to talk about it is that I work with small and mid-sized businesses to help them retain the top talent they can't afford to lose. So in that role, I provide consulting and executive advisory services for my clients. And then I also do executive coaching, and where I really like to focus in that area is on working with women director level and above who are working on building their emotional intelligence and their confidence as they earn that seat at the table that they deserve. So that's a little bit about me and my background. And I live in right outside of Denver, Colorado, in Evergreen, Colorado. That is actually part of my story. So I'll share a little bit about that as well. I'm super excited to be here. This is my second year speaking at Women in Product. And like I said to Rachel, just love the work that Women in Product does, and excited to be here and be able to support women who are just, doing incredible work in their careers. I also do have experience in the technology industry as well. So that's, I can understand some of the challenges that come with that. So let me find my mouse and share my screen. Also want to encourage you to use the chat on the left-hand side. I'm going to be asking you at various points to add some comments in the chat. You can also ask questions either in the chat or in the Q&A. Chloe, who is my moderator, thank you so much, Chloe, is going to be monitoring that Q&A for me, and I'll ask her at various periods if we have any questions. Also, as Chloe mentioned in the chat, if you want to scroll down below the kind of the screen with the video in the shared screen, you'll find a handout that you can download and use as a reference after the session. Also, just, if you haven't gotten that printed out, just have, some paper handy, as we're going to have some reflection period throughout this workshop as well. So let's get started with Unpack Your Bags and Lead. So let me tell you a story. And this is a story of an experience at an organization that I was at coming up. I joined the organization coming up in 10 years ago now. And in that organization, I had a senior director role, was doing really, really well. And they made the decision, they had multiple divisions, and they were going to merge these divisions into one. Sorry, these little pop-ups keep showing up in front of my face, and I'm trying to get them to go away. They were going to merge all the divisions into, or not the divisions, the shared services groups into one. So they were going to take their learning and development team and move it into shared services. And the conversation that I had with our leaders was that I was going to be the person who had the opportunity to be promoted into this VP of learning and development role. And this is what I saw as my career trajectory. Well, here's what happened. I didn't get the promotion. The decision was made for many reasons. Actually, not many reasons, a few reasons, but the decision was made to hire somebody from outside. Why the decision was made, what was behind that decision, that's not the relevant part of it. What's relevant is how I reacted to the decision. And that wasn't well. It was not, I would say, one of my most stellar moments as a leader, as a team member, as a leader of my team, as somebody reporting to my leader, who is the VP of HR of our division. I did not show up well. I reacted strongly. I was angry, I was hurt, I was sad, I was embarrassed, I was all of the things. And that came out in how I engaged with people and how I engaged with my manager and how I engaged with my team. I didn't, I let them see far more than they should have seen. But especially with my manager, who was a great supporter and a great mentor to me, and this was outside of her control. The negative emotions that I brought to her must have made her life really unpleasant for an extended period of time. And I'll never forget one time we were sitting there talking about this, and she said, "Why do you keep saying, why am I not enough? Why am I not enough?" Because that's the story I was telling myself in my head, was that I was not enough for this promotion. I then moved into a role. We were centralized, and now I was reporting to this new leader of learning and development, the VP of Learning and Development, and had responsibility for leadership development and was asked to plan a leader meeting for the top 100. All of our companies have that stratification of where your top leaders are, and I was asked to plan this meeting. I was asked to plan the meeting, facilitate the meeting, and be at the meeting to make the meeting work. Now, I was a senior director level, and at this organization, they made the cutoff for this top 100 meeting, not by title, but by levels below the CEO. Because of how we had reorganized, I was one level lower than the rest of the senior directors in the organization. So I was planning the meeting, I was facilitating the meeting. I was not actually participating or invited to the meeting. And again, I did not take that well. My new manager, our newly hired VP of Learning and Development, got an earful from me on a regular basis. I look back on that, and I'm pretty sure that I unloaded on a number of people, and they had to take my negative energy, and they had to take that on themselves and try and not let that impact their day-to-day work. It was impacting how I showed up as a leader every single day. So as I continued on this journey and on this path of managing this, the leadership development and the leadership meeting, I realized that I needed to do some work on myself, that I could not keep showing up in that way, that it was not okay, that was not in alignment with my values, that wasn't in alignment with the leader I wanted to be, that I had work to do. And so a couple of things happened. One, I decided that I needed to find fulfillment for myself outside of work. I realized that I had defined myself so much around my title. I don't have kids. I'm very happily married, but didn't have kids. It was all about my job, my career, my title. I defined myself so much around my job that when I didn't get this promotion, I was devastated. I needed to find fulfillment outside of work. So I took the opportunity to go through yoga teacher training. I also had the opportunity, because of, ironically, the leadership development program that I was now developing and producing. I had the opportunity to really dig into some incredible leadership development resources. And one of those was the book Discover Your True North by Bill George. And just a little aside, it was kind of really close to the work that we were doing. I lived in Minnesota at the time, and Bill George is the founder of Medtronic, which is headquartered in Minnesota. So his model around leading self, leading others, and authentic leadership really starts with, in this book, discovering your true north and really digging into those key moments in your life that have built you into the leader that you are and how you show up. So I'm coming out of this probably 6 months of serious swirl and making everyone around me, my family, my friends, my colleagues, probably pretty miserable listening to me. And I decided it was time to do some deep work. And in that deep work, what I realized is that my reaction to not getting the promotion was tied to some bags that I'd been carrying around since middle school, and that I needed to unpack those bags if I was going to lead successfully. So unpacking my bags. This is me in middle school, a long time ago. I was a complete dork. I completely own that. I was bullied in 7th grade. I was desperate to want to be included. What I realized as I was doing this deep work is that desperation to be included and that shame of feeling excluded led to incredible reactivity whenever I felt like I was being excluded. And I would react in negative ways. I would have all this negative self-talk and be telling me all these stories. Like I kept saying to my manager, why am I not enough? Why am I not enough? Why was I not enough to be invited to the slumber party? Why was I not enough to be asked to the middle school dance? And I was telling myself these stories that fit the narrative about why I didn't get this promotion, that I wasn't enough, even to the point where I realized that the CHRO at the time was an older gentleman, and recognizing that when I was in middle school, I got all my validation from adults. And so here's an adult who's not validating me by giving me the promotion. So I realized I needed to unpack that bag, to dig around and root out all the stuff so that I could understand and then manage my reaction in the future. So I'd love to hear it. I see some great comments in the post relating to getting wrapped up in success at work, relating to these scenarios, easy to get wrapped up in negative self-talk. I'd love to see in the chat, just post a yes if you've had a situation in your career where you wish you had reacted differently. Yes. A gazillion %, yes, right? More than one. Awesome. Thank you. So here's what I'd like to do for a moment here before I dive into how the concept, the approach of emotional intelligence really helped me do this deep work. What I'd like to do is have you take a moment. I haven't figured out how to do sound for the computer. I'm not going to sing for you, so we're just going to sit in some pleasant silence. If you had a chance to download that worksheet or just grab a piece of paper, want you to take a couple of minutes here. I'll give you 3 minutes. I'll time it. Think of a time in your career where you wish you'd reacted differently. And then jot down, how did you react and how did it impact how you showed up as a leader, both in the moment and longer term? So let me give you a couple of minutes to do some thinking on that. I will be right back with that. I was going to see if I could do music for you, and I cannot. Okay. Take just a few minutes to react on that or reflect on that. Give you 30 more seconds. So I saw a lot of yeses in the chat. I'm sure you had some experiences that you could reflect on and think about how that impacted how you showed up as a leader. So let's talk about emotional intelligence. And this is what I really needed to build. And let's be clear, I was pretty well into my career. I had some strong emotional intelligence in some areas, but not in others. I was, I think, 42-ish at the time when this happened. So my learning in this is I went through the yoga teacher training, my learning as I went through that deep work coming out of Discover Your True North is that I needed to build stronger EQ or emotional intelligence. So show me in the chat, is anyone else, yeah, thanks. Somebody else said they were hearing an echo, and Chloe noted if you have multiple windows open, you might hear an echo. Let me know in the chat. Here we've got a 4-box model of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Show a yes in the chat if you're familiar with this model of EQ. Have you seen this before? Anybody see this? Okay. Got a yes from Olivia, a couple. Some new ones. Great. Okay. So this model of emotional intelligence, I actually have it attributed, and it's attributed on your handout as well, to multiple sources, because it's really hard to determine which one is like the key source for this. If it's Daniel Goleman and his original work in emotional intelligence, or if it's Travis Bradberry and Gene Greaves, who wrote the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I have this in one of the resources we'll get to at the back at the end of the session. And then, so this idea of emotional intelligence is you've got these 4 components. There is what I see, what other people see, what I can see in myself, and then what I actually do, how I manage myself. There's the personal piece of emotional intelligence, which is all internal really, and then the social piece. How do I leverage emotional intelligence outwardly? So the 4 components of emotional intelligence, the first one is self-awareness. And this is really understanding your own emotions, what you're feeling, how it's showing up, why it's showing up, being really accurate in your assessment of yourself, and having self-confidence in yourself as well. Self-confidence is part of self-awareness and owning your own brilliance. Self-awareness is critical in order to have strong self-management and strong social awareness. So let's talk about self-management. So I see myself, I see what I'm feeling. Now, how do I manage my feelings? And this is where I was having some gaps in self-awareness, and I was having big gaps in self-management. That's the self-control, not being reactive, but also being honest about how you're feeling in a productive way, being able to adapt to challenging situations. There's also aspects of how self-management shows up in how we drive towards achievement and how we take initiative. Self-awareness also is critical for building strong social awareness. In social awareness, we're talking about empathy, having empathy for others and their situation. I naturally am a really empathetic person, but where I was falling short is because I didn't have a strong enough emotional self-awareness. I wasn't thinking with empathy about how my lack of self-management was impacting people around me. So social awareness is about having empathy for other people. It's about organizational awareness. This is what we kind of call navigating the politics of an organization, navigating the hierarchies, understanding all of those kind of unwritten and written structures that we need to work through. And also having a service orientation, wanting to help others, to be of service of others, of putting others, the organization, the community first. Self-management and social awareness lead to stronger relationship management. And this is what you need to be: an inspirational leader, to develop others, to really be an influence in your organization, to help be a catalyst for change. Again, it's that inspiration, that motivation. Relationship management is about managing conflict, right? You have to be able to manage your reactions if you're going to manage conflict. You have to have empathy for others if you're going to manage conflict. This is how we build bonds and how we build teamwork and collaboration. So these are the four components of emotional intelligence 2.0. What I'm going to focus on here is what was most important for me in my EQ journey, which was self-awareness and self-management. Those were my big gaps. But like I said, it was impacting my social awareness and relationship management as well. Here's the thing. Harvard Business Review published a study that said EQ, emotional intelligence, accounts for 90% of what sets high performers apart. 90%. And here's the other thing that's important to know. You can increase your EQ. It is not a foregone conclusion that your EQ is here and it's never going to change. But growth in emotional intelligence requires willingness to lean into it and really be willing to do the hard work, to do the deep work, to look at things that you don't necessarily like about yourself and how you're showing up. This is the work that I needed to do. I was able to understand that it can be developed. So if we look at IQ, personality, and EQ, IQ is generally stable over your lifetime. It doesn't change. Your IQ test that you might have when you're a kid, it's probably not going to change very much throughout your life. Personality is stable over your lifetime. If you have ever taken a DISC assessment or an insights assessment or a Myers-Briggs, you can take those decades apart and you might shift a little bit, but for the most part, you're going to stay in one spot because your personality is your personality. But EQ, building EQ is flexible and it can change over time. You can build self-awareness, self-management, the social awareness and the relationship management skills with intensity, intense practice, and intentional practice. So Chloe, I want to take a pause here and just ask her, do we have any questions in the T&A? Or T&A, Q&A.
No worries. Yeah, no, nothing yet. I think we're pretty stoked in and really invested in this presentation so far.
Great. And I just, when you started talking to me, that's weird. Okay, for some reason your sound is coming through my computer and not through my earphones. Well, I will just keep talking. I'm assuming you guys can hear me. Okay, so let's talk more now. I said I wanted to focus on self-awareness and self-management. Awesome, thanks Amy, you guys can hear me. Let's talk about self-awareness and self-management. So I'm going to talk about some of the techniques that are ways that you can build self-awareness and self-management. And I'll talk more specifically about how you can dig into a couple of these that I have bolded, and then I'll talk in more detail about a couple of examples as well. These are just some examples for building these skills. These come from the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 book. And again, I have that in the resources at the end of the presentation. I think I also have that in the handout as well. So self-awareness, what are some techniques around self-awareness? Stop treating your feelings as good or bad. They're your feelings. Once you get done labeling them, you can actually start to understand them and work with them. Observe the effect that your emotions have on others. Like I look back and I see the effect that my emotions had on other people and how unfortunate that was to them. Watch yourself like a hawk. Watch yourself like a hawk. When you need to, a hawk is known for being able to pull up and soar at a high level and see the detail down below. See the big picture, but also the detail. And it was interesting when I was prepping for this session, I was going back and reading through this. I read that one again and I made a connection. So I'll talk about kind of how I finished my journey as we get to the end of this workshop. I see the hawk as really a guide for me, and have thought about the hawk that way for a long time, long before I ever dug into this work. And in fact, after I'd done a lot of this deep work on my 45th birthday, I went out and got a fairly large tattoo of a hawk on my back. It's the only one I have. I'm like, oh, wow, that actually is a pretty good connection, because I had learned to watch myself as a hawk. Hey, Sue, I see you. Hello. Sue and I used to work together. It's great to see you here. Physically feel your emotions. This was really important to me. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, about the importance of really feeling your emotions. Understand what pushes your buttons Ask yourself, why do I do this? That's the work that I had to do. Like, why am I reacting in this way? Why does this matter to me? And that's when I really started to peel back that onion and get to that understanding of it was middle school me showing up that way. Check yourself. Check in and say, how am I showing up? What am I doing? And seek feedback. And I know we don't like feedback. Nobody likes feedback. Let's be clear about that. But it's important to be willing to seek that feedback. These are just some of the techniques that you can use to build self-awareness. And like I said, I'm going to get into a couple of these in a little bit more detail. And what about self-management? Breathing right. I'm going to teach you a breathing technique I learned in yoga teacher training to really ground yourself and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to calm you down. Get you out of that amygdala hijack and fight, flight, or freeze response when you're about to have a reaction. That's counting to 10, sleeping on it, not reacting in the moment. Create an emotion versus reason list. What are the emotional reasons you're doing something or making a decision? What are the reason-based reasons you're making a decision or having a reaction? Take control of your self-talk. That was a big one for me. Telling myself all of these stories, playing all these tapes that I'd had over years and years. Focusing your attention on your freedoms. What do you have in your control? This was a big part of how my story had to end, when I had to realize that my reaction was totally in my control. And by controlling that, I had a lot of freedom to navigate a lot of different situations. Talk to a skilled self-manager, somebody who's really good at this, and then speak to someone who's not emotionally invested in your problem, not somebody who is going to say, yes, you're right, you should have gotten that promotion, not somebody who's going to say, yes, that person is a jerk, somebody who's going to say, how might else you think about this? What's a different way we could reframe this? What else might come from this that's possible? These are some of the techniques for self-management. So when we talk about self-awareness, what I like to do is think about the self-awareness 5 whys. I love that. If you typed it while being hacked off, save it and reread it later. Save it in your draft file. Don't put a name in the to line. Save it. You can always come back to it. So self-awareness 5 whys. Tell me in the chat, have you heard of the 5 whys approach? Give me a yes in the chat if you've heard of the 5 whys approach. Okay, we got a couple yeses. Great. Okay, a couple no's. So we're going to go through the 5 whys approach here. So the 5 whys approach is a root cause analysis process. It was developed by Toyota in the 1930s and used to solve big business problems. It's really popular in Six Sigma initiatives. But I have found, good for Dad, I have found that it can also be used to unpack our bags. So I'll give you a couple of non-EQ ideas. One example is from Jeff Bezos. There was an associate at one of their warehouses who got hurt. He hurt his thumb. Question he asked, well, why does he get hurt? Why did he get hurt? Well, his thumb got caught in the conveyor. Well, why did his thumb get caught in the conveyor? Well, he was chasing after his bag because that was on a running conveyor belt. Well, why was his bag on moving machinery? Because he put his bag on the conveyor and it turned on by surprise. Well, why did he put his bag on the conveyor? Because he was using it as a table. Well, why was he using it as a table? Because he didn't have another place to put the bag. Okay, so the problem is not, so many people would say, okay, we got to do more safety and training about not putting your hands on conveyor belts. The problem was that there wasn't a table to put the bag on. So, another example that I like to tell people is like a woman, she needs a ride because her car doesn't have gas. Well, why doesn't her car have gas? Well, because she doesn't have money for gas. Well, why doesn't she have money for gas? Well, because she spent all of her money. Well, why did she spend all of her money? Well, because she was gambling. Well, why was she gambling? Well, because she's got a gambling problem. So the problem to solve is not the needing a ride or even filling the car with gas. The problem is gambling problem. So I needed to do this deep work with myself. So my example, why was I reacting so strongly to not getting promoted? It's because I felt stupid. I felt ashamed. Well, why did I feel ashamed? Well, I felt ashamed because I felt like I wasn't good enough, like I was less than, like I wasn't one of the cool kids. So why did I feel that way? Well, I felt that way because I wasn't included. I wasn't anointed. And why did that matter? Well, it mattered because it was a trigger for me. Well, why was it a trigger for me? Because of middle school. Most of my baggage goes back to middle school. Once I did that work of asking the 5 whys and getting to the real understanding of what was causing me to have that reaction, that's when I was able to build my self-awareness and self-management. And yoga teacher training was really important to me. This is where I learned to practice mindfulness for self-management. Some of the techniques around mindfulness, and this goes back to what we saw a couple of slides ago around those techniques to build self-awareness, self-management, recognizing your body sensations. So for me, understanding how shame showed up. Shame for me shows up as this feeling of flush, of like a fever coming up my neck and into my head and settling in my ears. Recognizing that that is my shame response. Brene Brown would be very proud of me. That power of the pause, not reacting immediately. The quote from Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. Naming it, naming the feeling, recognizing emotional self-awareness, recognizing the emotion and naming it, because my mentality is that naming it takes away the power from the emotion and gives you the power to manage the emotion. It gives you back your power. Feet on the ground. This is something I learned when I went and saw a yoga teacher who's really well known in the Minneapolis area. That's where I used to live, Matthew Sanford. Matthew Sanford is a quadriplegic, and he is a yoga teacher. He has been since long after he had the accident that was the cause of his quadriplegia. And he would talk about how when he needed to be mindful, he would put his feet on the ground, even if he couldn't feel his feet. He would put his feet on the ground and feel the connection to the earth below him and use that to ground him. And I was so struck by that this individual who doesn't have sensation in his legs and in his feet, could find that connection between his feet and the ground. And that's a technique that I have used over and over to put my feet on the ground and just sink in. And then grounding breath. I told you I'd share with you a breathing technique that I learned in yoga teacher training. We talk a lot about, slow inhale, slow exhale. Well, one of the other breathing techniques that we learn in yoga teacher training around pranayama, which is the breath work, is that there are breath patterns that can build energy and that can ground you. A breath pattern that can build energy would be to inhale for longer than you exhale. So inhale for a 6 count, hold it at the top, exhale for 4, hold it at the bottom. Just for, a 1 count or 2 count. Inhale 6, exhale 4. When we're in a reactive mode, we don't need to have our energy built, although that's a great technique if you're kind of fatigued. When you need to ground yourself, try doing a longer exhale. So whether it's a 4 count inhale, pause, 6 count exhale, 4 count pause, 8 count exhale, give yourself that longer exhale. And again, it kicks on the parasympathetic nervous system and it is going to ground you. These were some of the techniques that I learned to use through my yoga teacher training to manage my reactions. I learned so much in yoga teacher training. I did complete it. I haven't taught in a couple of years. I'm hoping to get back into it. But it was really transformative, not only for myself and my emotional intelligence, but also how I lead. So I want to go back to doing some self-reflection. But before we do that, Chloe, do we have any questions in the Q&A?
Yes, we do have one from Andrea.
Okay.
She asks, how do you avoid self-judgment when you are checking yourself and your behavior?
Ooh, how do you avoid self-judgment when you are checking yourself and your behaviors? And I would say it's about being kind and gracious to yourself. That understanding that this is a journey. Don't ascribe judgment to it, like that was bad or good. Remember I said that was a bad behavior. Look at it and say what it was. That was anger. That was fear. That was shame. That was anxiety. Not I was having it. Like I experience anxiety in my life, and I really try to change my talking about it. Not to say I have anxiety, but I am experiencing anxiety, right? So it's not a bad or good emotion. It is. identify it, and don't assign judgment to it. And also don't necessarily take ownership of it, like I said, and give yourself grace to say, okay, I am working to get better at this. And it's going to be a journey. It's always a journey. We never arrive. And like we say about in yoga, it's a yoga practice, not a yoga perfect. It's an EQ practice. I hope that helps answer that question. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed.
So let's have another few minutes of reflection time. Looking back on your story, I want you to take a moment to jot down, what do you think? And obviously, this is really quick. You're going to need to do a lot more deep diving on this, but what was really behind your reaction? Asking yourself why 5 times, and what mindfulness in the moment technique might have helped you. So I'll give you 2 minutes for this. I know that's pretty short, but I'm also trying to be cognizant of time. Thanks, Andrea. About another 20 seconds. I'd love to hear from you in the chat. How is this resonating with you? How is this feeling? Is this making sense? Is it helpful? Like, what's jumping out at you as we're talking about these concepts and techniques to build emotional intelligence? It is easier with somebody else asking the whys, right? Thanks, Monica. A good coach can come in handy. What else? I'd love to hear. Just slow down, right? Taking that breath. Difficult to identify the emotion, digging deeper, taking the time to reflect in the moment, right? And there's some great techniques in that book as well. One of the techniques that they talk about is have a drink with you. And anytime you feel yourself wanting to respond, take a sip of water, whatever you're drinking. Great. Thanks, everyone. So your body is so powerful. Your body tells you so much when you're really in tune to it. So I just want to tell you a little bit about continuing my journey, continuing my story. Like I mentioned, I had that leadership team meeting where I was supposed to be leading, was having all these reactions. 6 months later, I'd done a lot of this work. It's, again, not short period of time, a lot of work still to do, but I'm finding myself in the same position of doing this leadership team meeting where I'm leading it, I am designing it, and I'm not invited. And I remember so vividly, again, this is a body reaction, right? I was sitting there at my desk in my office, and I had a list of attendees that I was dividing up into tables for breakout groups. And just that, I'm not on this list. I'm not on this list. And I felt that shame sensation, that flush coming up and settling in my ears. And in that moment, I was able to say to myself, feeling this way, you're having this reaction because you feel left out. That's because of what happened to you decades ago. You are enough. This does not tell a story about you. I took a deep breath and I was able to move forward without having a reaction, without bringing anybody else into my swirl. That was one successful moment. Trust me, there have been plenty of unsuccessful moments, but that was one successful one. Once I was able to really get grounded in myself, I understood what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, and I had an opportunity to move to a different company, get a different role. I actually got promoted there into a role that this is not imposter syndrome, I was completely unqualified for. And I leveraged but because I had built strong relationships, I had shown up with self-awareness, self-management, and confidence. I leveraged my EQ to build a really strong leadership presence, to coach others, and to make an impact in that organization. This continues to be a journey of self-awareness and self-management for me. Trust me, especially when I'm talking to my husband about things that are stressful, I am working on this all the time. What was really cool for me is that there were two unexpected outcomes of this process of building my EQ. One was that I had the opportunity to launch my own business, and that's what I do now. And as I did that, I developed my own model of leadership that resonates with me, what I call the compass rose of leadership. I love hiking, I love the outdoors, and I use this compass as my guide, being strategic, being authentic, being pragmatic, and being compassionate. And EQ impacts all of these directions of this compass of leadership. More importantly, it led to me developing my own personal mantra. The outcome you want may not be the outcome you need. Because here's what happened. If I'd gotten that promotion, a lot of other things wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have moved to that new company. I wouldn't have gotten a promotion there. When that company got acquired by a public company, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to take a package. If I hadn't had that opportunity to take a package, I wouldn't have, with my husband, picked up and moved to Colorado without a job. I wouldn't have started my own company. I seriously doubt that I would be standing here talking to you right now, which, trust me, is a lot more fulfilling than that promotion I thought I wanted and deserved. And I tell myself this over and over again. The outcome you want may not be the outcome you need. And it is one of the key mantras that I use to manage my own emotional intelligence. So, quick thing for you to do, and I would love to have you share in the chat here. Tiffany, do you think my initial reaction prohibited me from looking for future promotions and might have been behind? Oh, yeah, I'm sure that how I showed up, yeah, that's not a person that we necessarily want in a leadership role. Absolutely impacted my promotability at that organization. Absolutely. So action planning, always have to have good action planning. Want you to take a moment to jot down 2 to 3 actions you are going to take to learn more about and build your EQ. And I would love to see you share one of those in the chat. Couple of actions you're going to take to learn about and build your EQ. Pause before responding. Take that deep breath. Identifying those triggers. I am going to share some resources with you in just a moment, Tiffany. Thanks for asking. Bottle of water for the pause. Success does not equal career success. Taking the moment before reacting, the sip of water, yoga. Highly recommend yoga. I always say that the mat is the greatest teacher. I always learn something about myself when I am on the mat. I always learn something about where my head is at. Mat under your chair to put your feet on for grounding. I love it. Save the email, don't send it. Travel, get out, do things that are amazing. No emotional decisions, take time to think. Awesome. So, a couple of resources. First of all, here's my contact information. And I love to do this work. I love to talk about EQ and bring it into companies, keynotes, workshops. I'm certified in a 360 assessment for called the EQI. I am very active on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. I'm posting usually a couple times a week about leadership topics, culture development topics. This morning, I posted a welcome to my new employee, who is my new puppy. So you can see a picture of my puppy. And I also have a link at bookshop.org where I have some resources put out there, and have it's just a great way. I admittedly get a little bit back if you buy through there, but it really supports independent booksellers. Here are a couple of resources for you. Emotional Intelligence 2.0, that's the book I mentioned, and it includes an assessment. If you buy the book, there's an envelope at the back with a code. Emotional Agility, Get Unstuck, Embrace Change, and Thrive in Work and Life. Discover Your True North by Bill George, and Primal Leadership by Daniel Goleman. I am going to add one more, which I forgot, which is my favorite yoga book. I'm pointing behind me because it's on the shelf. I'll put it in the chat. It's Living Your Yoga by Judith Hanson Lassiter, and that book changed my life, and I probably pull it out on a monthly basis. Tiffany, do I work with individuals? Yes, I do. Give me a shout if you'd like to chat more about that. Sue, how do you identify a skilled self-manager? It's funny, in the book, they're like, give this book to somebody and have them take the assessment. I think it's about looking around you and seeing who are people that manage their reactions really well and are able to say, I'm feeling really frustrated about this. Here's what I'm going to do about it, right? Like, they can talk about their emotions and they can talk about how they're feeling, but it doesn't impact how they show up. I have, actually, the woman who I worked with at the company when I didn't get the promotion, she is one of those people for me. And she's told me that really, like, seeing me go through that really hurt her. Like, it made her really sad. And I'm like, Gail, it's fine, because it worked out so amazing for me in the end. Let me give you that yoga book, Living Your Yoga by Judith Hanson Lassiter. So great resources, highly encourage you to check those out. And again, just want to emphasize, be gentle with yourself, okay? This is a journey. It is a practice. Ask for feedback, check in, check yourself, feel your body, take those breaths. You can build your EQ, and it's a lifetime practice, and every little step makes an impact. So Chloe, before we wrap up, any other questions in the Q&A?
Let's see, that's about it. The rest of the questions were in the chat.
Great. Wonderful. So thank you, everyone. I kept you a few minutes over. I hope it was worth it. Really loved being able to talk about this topic with you. This is just an incredible conference full of incredible women, and I am so happy to be here. I'll hang out a little bit. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat. Thank you, and have a great rest of your conference. Megan, get back on the mat. Thanks, everyone. Got the slides. You can download the slides, download the worksheet. Okay, Chloe, it looks like we've got people dropping off. If you want to come back on camera, I'd love to say thank you.
Thank you. This was so helpful. I thought that EQ was like a pretty good, well, it was a good fit for me. I've written a little bit about empathy and that, but I was surprised by how much you could do without having anything at your, like, nothing like special. We all have feet, right? Oh, many of us have feet.
Right. We all breathe.
We all breathe.
Just, I don't know why. Do you see my camera keep flashing?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know what's causing that. It was fine before people started joining. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, and I tried turning it off and turning it back on. It didn't seem to fix it. So, no, I mean, there's so much we can do, and that doesn't require a lot of expense, or it's just about getting in there and doing the work and being kind of like Brene Brown says, getting in the rumble, right? But it's the rumble with yourself.
And I mean, like, I deal with this all the time. I see a regular therapist, and all the things you're saying is like free therapy, by the way, Cynthia.
Yep. Hold on. I'm going to take my AirPods out. I don't know what's going on with them.
All sorts of technical things going on. I can read your lips, though. There we go. Yep.
Yeah, it was really weird. It was just you and I, and now I'm not flashing either. When it was something going on with my computer, when it was just you and I, you were coming through on my earpods, and then once others joined, I was getting your sound through my computer, and I wonder if it was actually, if I was coming through the computer as well. It's irrelevant, so I could hear you, but
everything went really smoothly. I think the presentation was great, and everyone could hear you really well and see you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I will let you get on with your day. I really appreciate your help.
Likewise, of course. I'll see you around.
Thanks, Chloe.
Bye, Cynthia.
Bye-bye.